Hello everybody, what's going on? My name is Simo, and in the stopgap between now and actually releasing the Conduit 2 tutorial for playing online in 2020 and stuff like that, I wanted to do this little quick video, at least hopefully quick, on talking about being precise in your speech. And I think this actually has a lot to do with selling, communicating, and actually the ability to uh, basically deliver a message in a way that everybody can understand and on terms that everybody understands, which is probably the more important bit. Because I think this is as a whole the reason why a lot of even the most simple things like not understanding sarcasm is the reason why these things exist. And I mean by things as confusion, frustration, anger, disappointment, lots of debates, arguing, all this kind of stuff. It all originates from people either not understanding the things that are being said, and I think that's a little bit more rare than what people actually think about. If what actually happens if you actually stop and think about it, really the problem is that not setting the ground rules for what is actually constituting what we're talking about, and really this comes from the whole problem of essentially not being precise in your speech. I remember, in fact, this happens a lot, but I'm going to use this as an example very recently. In the place that I work at, there's not really a whole lot to do. In fact, really, technically, I don't think they even really want us to do really anything. But one of the things I do to kind of help pass the time and prevent myself from sleeping and being bored and stuff like that, and essentially getting in trouble in the sense of not doing my job, is that I like to draw. I like to just draw stuff, just draw people, anime characters, real life pictures, all this kind of stuff. Really, in particular, just people in general. And I like to do it and try to practice and try to get the style that I want because it's just a thing that I enjoy. It helps pass the time. And as a whole, it's an art activity that I can do while I'm doing that, because it's not like I could be, sitting at my desk or where my position's supposed to be in my job and start making music or whatever. It doesn't work that way. And so oftentimes I will just practice and draw stuff and just use references and things like that and just do things that I enjoy in that respect. And I've been doing this since in more recent times, since like 2017 in April, about April 1st or so. So we're talking almost 3 years here. But even before then, from like 2010 and going backwards to at the very least 2008, but probably even 2006, was drawing a little bit then too. And overall, when you have this kind of experience and time with drawing, it basically gives it essentially pretty much it will give you the skills necessary to essentially quote unquote be good. And I don't think I'm necessarily good at it. I'm probably like average or maybe even below average, I guess, in the drawing capacity. But even still, a lot of people appreciate it. But one of the things that I've always found kind of interesting and annoying in a lot of regards, and also just I'm not exactly sure how to exactly deal with it aside from just sucking it up and being grateful, but even then it doesn't necessarily answer the question. But one of the things I've always found confusing is, like when people come up to me and say, wow, that's talented, where'd you learn that, or, all this kind of stuff. And I get it, I get it in the sense of like, yeah, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. And that dude must be really talented to do that. But when I stop down and they're actually willing to listen and just actually say, and just, willing to actually accept the fact that I've been doing this for at least, 2.5 years. In the last, since 2017, somewhere close to there, maybe a little over, and also had like about at least 3 years prior of experience, or to like 5 years of prior experience, before starting it back up in 2017. And I tell them the actual definition of the word talent. If they're willing to hear that out, they tend to understand that a bit better, but most people don't. And I think that's because when people say talent in our society, they just simply mean this person's skilled. But the problem is that you're mixing up the definitions of those words pretty heavily. I mean, you really are. You just, like, you look at the definition of the word skilled, and you look at the definition of the word talented, they're not going to be the same and really all that synonymous. Now, the only real synonymous thing about them is that both parties, one talented, one skilled, are going to be good at their craft. But the resulting reasons why they're good at their craft has nothing to do with each other at all. Talent is a natural born skill or aptitude towards a particular hobby or interest or activity of any kind. If I was to be able to play the music, like, not play the music, play the piano, there we go. I don't know where I got the music from, but if I was to play the piano, right, and I was like, let's say 7 years old, 10 years old, and I was to play like somebody that maybe had about 6 to a year's experience already, just from listening and watching how people play and stuff like that, and, hadn't basically no prior experience, but started playing like I already had about a year's worth of experience, that would be talented by that definition. That would actually be talented. Of course, wouldn't be skilled because I would still have underdeveloped some things. Maybe I wouldn't be developed in the sense of, for example, I wouldn't be developed in the sense of the ability to like have rhythm, obviously, actually having my notes strike at the right time, basically so that it feels like there is a natural born rhythm there. There may be areas like that I need to practice in, but maybe as a whole, I could still play like a piece from like Mozart or something like that, or whatever. Maybe just by listening and watching and that kind of a thing, and that would be talented. But if I was to get on the piano who had no prior experience and start playing it right now, I would play like a freaking 5-year-old. Just hands down, I really would. I've had very little experience with the piano whatsoever. And quite frankly, that's just not because it's just because I'm not talented at it. But give me about a year's worth of experience, I'll be as good as that kid. Now, that kid and me, if we were to equalize that, give me about a year's worth of playing experience and him just have those couple minutes to just hop on and start playing, we would be about at the both about the same skill level, more or less. Maybe I'd be slightly better in some areas like rhythm, whatever, because I'll be actually playing with a metronome while I do it, or at least playing at the notes at the same time as the actual piece that I'm playing. And maybe he would have a better sense of all this kind of other stuff in some areas, or maybe not, but we were more or less the same. But the resulting reasons behind it are purely because I practiced. The other dude did not. He just simply had the natural born gift. And this is the definition that many people miss when they say the word talented. Oh, you're talented. And as a result, I get annoyed. I get frustrated because when I think of the word talented, I think of the definition that I just described. That, 7, 10-year-old kid basically sitting down on the piano for the first time playing and basically, mastering that essentially, quote unquote. Maybe not in all areas, but nailing it down pretty good. That's what I think of when someone says the word talented. But when they say the word talented, they think of me practicing for a while. But that's not what that word means. And the problem is that you confuse the two definitions, and that confusion, it has to be dealt with in some way. And unfortunately, many times the peaceful way to deal with it is to set the boundaries, the guidelines, and the rules about what different things are. The reason why we say, for example, in football, like everybody has to be in these positions and everybody has to stay still until the ref is actually blows the whistle or whatever does the actually initiating the actually playing football. I'm not really savvy in football at all, so as you can probably tell, but you get what I'm saying. The reason why the ground rules are set in the way that if somebody does X action and everybody then actually starts playing, the reason why that's set is so that everybody can be on the same playing field and actually knows what's going to happen and what's going to go on, at the very least, in terms of that that everyone's going to try to play the win and in a fair manner. The reason why that's set like that is because of those reasons. And in order to do that in a peaceful way, everybody has to be on the same playing field, both on basically mentally and actually understanding what's going to happen. And as a whole, that's how you actually make it peaceful. But the other solution to dealing with the confusion is arguing, debating, frustration, being annoyed, and ultimately not resolving any kind of actual conflict in a peaceful manner. And until you're able to do the first way of solving it in a peaceful manner by setting what rules are which, you're going to have these confusions. And the only way you can do that is to be precise in what you say, otherwise being precise in your speech. And I don't think that this is going to be an issue that resolves anytime quickly. I think this has actually been an issue for essentially all of humanity. But I do think it's a conscious effort that more people have to pay attention to, including myself. Because trust me, I'm not that at all. When I type out stuff, I often make grammar mistakes, just spelling mistakes as a whole, and it's because I don't want to go back and look at it and see, okay, is this right? Is this wrong? But I need to do that better. I need to actually start doing that better. So trust me, I'm not trying to say this from like a pulpit type of a thing. And when I talk, I want to make sure I have a better way of explaining it, and maybe I need to take about a couple seconds to 10 seconds, 30 seconds before I even start talking, maybe even a whole minute, maybe 5 minutes, to actually know what I want to say and actually have it make sense. And that is a problem that I have a lot. So again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm from a pulpit here when I say this, but it is a common issue with me, and because it is a common issue, I run into the frustration, the anger, the disappointment, the arguing, the debating, all this kind of stuff, and it leaves me nowhere good. It leaves me very frustrated, leaving very alone and hopeless and things like that, all because of confusion and the unwillingness to, at times, just try to figure out, in fact, really a lot of the time, just trying to figure out, what am I trying to say? What are the ground rules for what I'm trying to say? And things of that nature. And I don't think this issue is going to be easily resolved. If you want a very broad and open case for this, just look at the internet whenever somebody uses sarcasm. You often see snarky or remarks that are something along the lines of, well, I shouldn't have to use this tag, like little, I think it's what is it? One of the slash lines, I think it's either left or right. I don't remember exactly which one, but the slash line with the little S, just the letter S, basically indicating that, hey, this is sarcasm. Yeah, I'll put it on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, people are being like, why should I have to use this tag? This kind of stuff. And the reason being you got to use that tag is because it doesn't set the ground rules for what is actually obvious. Because the problem with text is that we read text, if we're not reading it out loud, and even if we do read it out loud, there can be still issues. And most people don't read stuff out loud nowadays, they read it in their mind. But the problem is when you read it in your mind, you read it in your own head, you read it in your own thoughts, and you read it in your own way, which is actually the biggest problem. And that may not include the sarcasm at all, even if worded poorly. And even if worded not poorly, but worded in the best way possible, that it could be clearly sarcasm. If that person is not familiar with the subject given at hand, and especially if it is a controversial subject like politics or religion, or in many other things as well, it can be even the simple stuff like video games. If people don't understand the context given and what the subject matter is being talked about, there will be confusion about what is said and how it actually says. And you could mean it in one way that is purely sarcastic and meant to demonstrate the absurdity of the statement, but another person could think that you're actually taking that literally. And then the following comments, they're all in the joke, but that person isn't. And so they comment and being like, well, what do you mean? That's not true. And then someone has to be like, well, I was just being sarcastic, man. But the unfortunate thing is this all could have been more easily avoided. I'm not saying completely, because there's some people that don't want to read all the way through. And I've done this before too. But it would certainly help out a lot more and actually give the person making the sarcastic remark a room of legitimate excuse to say, I was being sarcastic. But because they didn't put that little tag there, no one that was not in the joke, or at the very least not more socially savvy on the internet or text in general, could really understand. And this is a legitimate problem. This is a problem that is not going to be resolved until people start being more precise in your speech. And I would argue that you should probably start using that sarcasm tag so you can actually be more precise in your speech, because the ground rules are not set for what is actually going to be precise, and understandably so. The internet is still really new. The type of interactions that we're having online, probably at the most, are about 2 decades in. But even that's kind of overstating that a little bit, because 2000 was, while the internet was around at that time, I don't think it was really around in the same capacity it is right now. I think at the earliest is probably more like 2007, 2010 type of era. So we're talking around a decade of development to really understand all the ground rules and what's actually being played out when we communicate on text on social media. And again, this is going to be a major problem until we actually fix this. So I would recommend, just personal note, I would personally recommend, including myself, just to start being more precise in your speech and what you try to say, and what you try to type, and how you say it. And just also at the same time, if there is a word that can be applied more directly in a more obvious way to something that you actually mean, such as my personal example, talented versus skilled, use the word that's already broadly known, already has that definition set. If I was to tell a really good person at a video game, being like, oh man, you're talented, and then I learned that 10 years they've been practicing that, I don't think it's very helpful to call that person talented when I now know they've been doing this for 10 years. And again, I'm not talking about talking in ignorance, because some people don't know stuff, and it's not because they're bad people or stupid or unwilling to learn. It's just that they just didn't know, and that's really all it is. But once you do know, try to fix that a little bit. Just do your best. And I think at the end of the day, a little bit of humility in yourself, knowing that you don't know everything, I don't know everything, and that we need to be a little bit more accepting of what people are, and learning how to be compassionate in the sense of, this person probably doesn't mean wrong, but as such, bad things can happen regardless, and we just need to take a little bit more time to understand each other. And I'm not trying to sound cliche with this, but just at the end of the day, a little bit of love goes a long way, and a little bit of proper communication definitely goes longer. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully the Kano 2 tutorial thing will be out relatively soon. I'm trying to aim for this Friday, but we'll see. So not gonna do anything to rush that, but we'll see. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch y'all later. Bye-bye.